Stop scrolling right now. If you think you know what darkness looks like, if you think you understand suffering, if you believe evil only exists in movies, you need to hear my story. Hit that subscribe button before I begin, because what I'm about to tell you will shake you to your core. This isn't fiction. This isn't exaggeration. This is the true story of how my own father stole 10 years of my life, locked me away from the world like an animal, and how one man's courage saved me from a hell you can't imagine. Turn on those notifications because stories like this need to be heard, need to be shared, need to remind us that monsters don't always look like monsters. They sometimes look like fathers. Stay until the very end. You'll understand why this story had to be told. My name is Adanna. I'm 27 years old now. But for 10 years, from age 13 to 23, I didn't exist. Not to the world, not to my village, not even to myself. I was a ghost, a prisoner, a secret locked away in darkness and chains by the man who was supposed to protect me. This is my story, and I'm telling it so that no one else suffers what I suffered in silence for 3,650 days. I grew up in a small village in an amber state. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where traditions run deep, where a man's word in his household is law. My father, Okonkwo, was a respected man in our community, a farmer, a church elder, a man people greeted with reverence. To the outside world, he was a pillar of strength and morality. To me and my mother, he was a tyrant. My mother died when I was 12. Everyone said it was malaria. I knew better. I'd seen the bruises she tried to hide. I'd heard her crying in the night after he'd beaten her for some imagined offense. I'd watched the light fade from her eyes over the years as his cruelty broke her spirit. When she died, I cried for 3 days. Then I realized something terrifying. Now I was alone with him. At first, he ignored me. I cooked. I cleaned. I stayed quiet. I tried to be invisible. For almost a year after my mother's death, I survived by becoming a shadow in my own home. Then I turned 13, and everything changed. I started developing. My body was changing, becoming a woman's body. And my father started looking at me differently. Not with pride or paternal affection. With something dark. Something that made my skin crawl. He started making comments about my appearance. About my body. About how I was tempting men with how I looked. He'd stare at me during meals in a way that made me want to disappear. I tried to hide myself. I wore my mother's old, loose dresses. I stopped bathing properly because I was afraid of him seeing me. I became terrified of my own body because of how he looked at it. Then came the night that destroyed my life. I was 13 years and 7 months old. I remember the exact age because that was the last time I saw the sun for 10 years. My father came home from the farm that evening, reeking of palm wine. He'd been drinking with other men in the village. When he drank, his cruelty multiplied. "Adanna," he called out when he entered our compound. "Come here." I came, my heart already racing with fear. When he drank, anything could happen. He looked at me with those cold, dark eyes. "You're becoming a woman. Do you know what that means?" I shook my head, terrified. "It means you'll bring shame to this family. Like your mother did. Like all women do. They can't be trusted. They're vessels of sin and temptation." "Papa, I haven't done anything." Silence. His hand flew across my face, so hard I fell to the ground. "You don't speak unless I tell you to speak." I tasted blood in my mouth. My ear was ringing. "I've decided," he said, his voice calm now, which was somehow more terrifying than his anger. "I won't let you become like other girls in this village. Running around, bringing disgrace. I won't let you shame me like your mother did. Papa, please, I'm a good girl. I don't go anywhere. I just stay home." And he grabbed me by my hair and dragged me across our compound. I screamed, but our nearest neighbor was far enough away that no one heard. He dragged me to a small storage room at the back of our property, a room that had been used to keep farming equipment. Inside, there was nothing. Just bare walls, a small window too high to reach, and a metal ring embedded in the wall. "This," he said, his breathing heavy, "is where you'll stay. Until you learn. Until I can trust you. Until you understand that a woman's place is submission and silence." "Papa, no, please. I'll be good. I promise. I'll do anything." He pulled out a thick metal chain, the kind used to tie up goats, and a padlock. Heavy, rusty, impossible to break. He wrapped the chain around my ankle and locked it to the ring in the wall. The chain was just long enough that I could move a few feet, but not long enough to reach the door or the window. "You'll stay here," he said. "I'll bring you food and water. You'll have a bucket for your waste. This is for your own good, Adanna, to protect you from yourself, from sin, from the evil that lives in all women." "Papa, please," I screamed, pulling at the chain, my ankle already bleeding from the metal cutting into my skin. "Please don't do this. I'm your daughter." He turned at the door and looked at me one last time. You stopped being my daughter when you started becoming a woman. Now you're just a problem that needs to be contained." He left, locked the door from the outside, and my 10 years in hell began. The first days were the worst. I screamed until my voice gave out. I pulled at the chain until my ankle bled so much I thought I might bleed to death. I begged. I cried. I promised anything if he would just let me out. He came once a day, always at night. He'd bring a small plate of food, usually Gary, and a tiny piece of dried fish, just enough to keep me alive, and a cup of water. He'd empty my waste bucket. He wouldn't speak to me, wouldn't acknowledge my pleas. Sometimes he'd hit me if I cried too loud. "I can hear you from the house," he'd say. "Stop crying, or I'll give you something to really cry about." So I learned to cry silently. The room was dark. The small window let in a little light during the day, but it was too high for me to see anything except a tiny patch of sky. At night, it was complete blackness. Suffocating, absolute darkness where I couldn't see my own hands. I had no blanket, no mat, just the cold concrete floor. In the rainy season, water would seep in and I'd be soaking wet for days, shivering, sick, praying for death. In the dry season, the heat was unbearable. The room would become an oven. I'd press my face against the wall, trying to find any cool spot, my body covered in heat rashes and infected sores. The chain around my ankle never came off. Never. Within weeks, the skin around it had become raw, infected, rotting. I could smell my own flesh decaying. I wanted to cut my foot off just to escape the pain. But I had nothing. No knife. No tool. Nothing except my hands and the clothes on my body that slowly turned to rags. Months passed. Then years. I stopped counting days. Time stopped meaning anything. There was just darkness and pain and the sound of my own breathing. My father kept his routine. Once a day, usually after dark, he'd come with food and water. Sometimes he'd forget for 2 or 3 days, and I'd be so weak from hunger and thirst that I couldn't even sit up. "You're learning," he'd say when he finally came. "You're learning to be quiet, to be obedient. This is what women need, discipline and control." I stopped begging him to let me out. I stopped crying when he came. I stopped being human and became something else. Something that just existed in the dark, waiting for nothing, hoping for nothing. I lost track of how old I was. Was I 15, 17, 20? I didn't know. My body changed in the darkness. I went from a girl to a woman without ever seeing myself. My monthly cycle came and went with nothing to manage it except torn pieces of my dress. The shame and humiliation of that alone would have broken most people. Sometimes I'd hear sounds from outside. Children playing. Women talking as they passed by on the road. Market days when the village came alive with activity. And I'd remember that the world still existed out there. That people were living normal lives just meters away from where I was dying slowly in chains. I wondered if anyone remembered me. If anyone asked my father, "Where is your daughter Adanna? We haven't seen her in years." What did he tell them? That I'd gone to live with relatives? That I was sick? That I'd run away? Did anyone even care enough to ask? I developed rituals to stay sane. I'd sing songs my mother taught me, so quietly only I could hear. I'd tell myself stories. I'd count the raindrops that came through cracks in the roof. I'd have conversations with my mother's spirit, begging her to help me, to save me, to take me with her to wherever the dead go. "Mama," I'd whisper into the darkness, "if you can't hear me, please help. Please send someone. Anyone. I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired. I just want to rest." But no help came. Year after year, no one came. By what I later learned was my 20th year, 7 years into my imprisonment, I'd given up completely. I stopped eating the food he brought. I wanted to die. I was ready to die. Living like this wasn't living. It was just slow torture. "Eat," he commanded, pushing the plate toward me. I turned my face away. He grabbed my jaw roughly, forcing my mouth open, shoving the Gary down my throat until I choked and had to swallow. "You don't get to die, Adanna. You don't get to escape your punishment that easily." So I lived. Not because I wanted to, but because he wouldn't let me die. Then, 3 years ago, when I was 23 years old, something changed. The chain that had held me for 10 years, the chain that had become part of my body, that had fused with infected flesh, that I'd stopped even noticing, broke. Not completely, but one of the links, rusted from a decade of my blood and tears, in the damp environment, cracked. I was lying on the floor, half conscious from hunger, when I shifted my leg and heard a sound I hadn't heard in 10 years. A metallic snap. I froze. Slowly, afraid I'd imagined it, I moved my leg again. The chain moved more freely than it ever had. With shaking hands, I felt along the chain in the darkness. And I found it, a link that had split partially open. Not enough to free me completely, but enough to give me a tiny bit more mobility. For the first time in 10 years, I felt something other than despair. Hope. Dangerous, painful, fragile hope. I worked at that broken link every day, bending it, pulling it, using the only tool I had, my own weakened hands. My fingers bled. My nails broke. But slowly, over weeks, the gap in the link widened. And then, one day, it opened enough. I slipped the chain through. And for the first time in 3,650 days, I wasn't connected to the wall. I still had the chain locked around my ankle. That padlock was solid, unbreakable, but I could move. I could reach the door. I could reach the window. I was still trapped in the room, but I wasn't chained to the wall anymore. That small freedom felt like everything. I started testing the door every day. It was locked from the outside, solid, but I pushed and pulled and examined every inch, looking for weakness. And I started screaming again. Not when my father was home. He'd beat me for that. But during the day, when he was on the farm, I'd scream. I'd call for help. I'd bang on the walls with my fists until they bled. Help me. Please. Someone help me. I'm locked in here. Please. Week after week, I screamed. My voice, and used for so long, was weak and hoarse. But I screamed anyway, and no one heard. Until one day, someone did. I was screaming, as I did every day now, when I heard something I hadn't heard in a decade. Someone screamed back. Hello? Who's there? Where are you? I froze, unable to believe it. A voice. A human voice that wasn't my father's. Help me. I screamed louder than I ever had. I'm locked in here. Please help me. Where? I can't see you. Behind the house. The storage room. Please. My father locked me here. Please get me out. Silence. For a terrifying moment, I thought he'd left. Thought I'd imagined it. Thought my mind had finally broken completely. Then I heard heavy footsteps running. Voices. Multiple voices. There's a door here. Locked from the outside. Did you hear what she said? Someone's locked in there. We need to break it down. No, the lock is too strong. We need tools. Then one voice, deeper, calmer. I'm a blacksmith. I have tools at my workshop. I'll be back. I promise. Don't worry, we'll get you out. Please hurry. I sobbed. Please don't leave me here. I won't. I promise. Just hold on. I'll be back in minutes. And he was. Within what felt like an eternity, but was probably 15 minutes, I heard him return. Heard the sound of metal on metal. Saw the door shake as he worked on the lock. Stand back from the door if you can, he shouted. I moved as far as my ankle chain allowed. Then, with a loud crack, the lock broke. The door swung open. And for the first time in 10 years, light poured into my prison. I couldn't see. The sudden light was blinding, painful. I covered my face with my hands, my eyes streaming tears from the brightness. Oh my God, I heard someone whisper. This is evil. This is pure evil. Who did this to you, child? I lowered my hands slowly, letting my eyes adjust. Through my blurred vision, I saw them. 5 men. Villagers. Strangers. And one man in the front, the blacksmith, I assumed, staring at me with horror and compassion on his face. They saw what I'd become. A skeleton with skin. Filthy beyond description. My hair matted and crawling with lice. My ankle a rotted mess of flesh and metal. My clothes nothing but rags barely covering my body. My skin covered in sores and scars, and the evidence of a decade of suffering. I tried to speak, but no words came. I just collapsed, my body finally giving out after holding on for so long. The blacksmith rushed forward and caught me before I hit the ground. His arms were the first human touch I'd felt in 10 years that wasn't violent. I sobbed into his shoulder. 10 years of tears that I'd held back, that I'd swallowed, that I'd hidden in the darkness. They all came out at once. Who did this? He asked gently. Who locked you here? My father, I managed to whisper. The men erupted in angry voices. Her father? Where is he? Someone get the police. No, get the whole village. This man needs to face justice. The blacksmith looked at the chain still locked around my destroyed ankle. I need to get this off you. It's going to hurt. I don't care, I whispered. Just get it off. Please. He worked quickly and carefully, using his tools to cut through the chain and carefully pry open the padlock without causing more damage to my already ruined ankle. When the last piece fell away, I looked down at my foot, swollen, infected, barely recognizable as human, and realized I was finally, truly free. They carried me out of that room. And when I saw the sky, the beautiful, endless, blue sky, I broke down completely. The villagers gathered quickly. Word spread like wildfire. Okonkwo's daughter is alive. He's been keeping her locked up for years. By the time my father returned from the farm that evening, half the village was at our compound. He walked in, saw the crowd, saw me sitting there wrapped in someone's wrapper, and his face went pale. What is the meaning of this? He tried to bluster. This is my house. My property. Get out. Your property? The blacksmith stepped forward, his voice shaking with rage. You locked your own daughter in chains for 10 years like an animal? You called it your property. She needed discipline. She was becoming uncontrollable. This is my household, my business. Uncontrollable. An elderly woman from the village shouted. She was a child, 13 years old, when you locked her away. We remember Adanna. She was a good girl. What evil possessed you to do this? Other voices joined in. The crowd was becoming a mob. They wanted justice. They wanted blood. My father realized the danger he was in. He tried to run. The men caught him before he'd gone 3 steps. They didn't beat him, though many wanted to. Instead, they held him for the police who arrived an hour later. As the officers put him in handcuffs, my father looked at me one last time. And do you know what he said? This is your fault, Adanna. You made me do this. You were always trouble. Just like your mother. No remorse. No apology. No recognition of the monstrous evil he'd committed. Just blame. Shifting responsibility to a child he'd tortured for a decade. That was the last time I saw my father. He was arrested, charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and child abuse. The trial took months. The whole village testified against him. The evidence was overwhelming. My destroyed ankle, my malnutrition. The room itself stood as testimony to his cruelty. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He's still there now. An old man rotting in a cell, which is more mercy than he showed me. The blacksmith who saved me, his name is Emeka, became my guardian during my recovery. He and his wife took me in, nursed me back to health, helped me relearn how to be human. It took months before I could walk properly. My ankle had to be surgically cleaned and reconstructed. I have a permanent limp now and chronic pain that I'll carry the rest of my life. It took years of therapy before I could sleep without nightmares, before I could be in a small room without panicking, before I could trust anyone enough to let them close to me. But slowly, painfully, I healed. Not completely. You don't come back from 10 years of that kind of trauma completely, but enough to live. Enough to find moments of joy. Enough to believe that I deserved freedom. Emeka helped me get my identification papers, helped me enroll in adult education classes, helped me learn how to exist in the world again. His wife, Ngozi, taught me things my mother never got to teach me. How to be a woman. How to trust. How to hope. They saved me in every way a person can be saved. Today, I'm 27. I work at a local NGO that helps victims of domestic violence and child abuse. I share my story with other survivors. I tell them that if I could survive 10 years in chains, they can survive whatever darkness they're facing now. I've learned to smile again, to laugh, to feel the sun on my face and be grateful for it, to wake up every morning in a room with no chains and thank God that I'm alive. The scars remain, physical and psychological. I'll carry them forever, but they don't define me anymore. I'm not just the girl who was locked up for 10 years. I'm Adanna, survivor, advocate, warrior. And I'm telling this story for every girl out there suffering in silence. Every child trapped by an abusive parent. Every person who thinks no one cares, no one will help, no one will believe them. I'm telling you, scream. Keep screaming. Someone will hear you eventually. Someone will help. Don't give up, even when it feels hopeless. And to everyone else, pay attention. Listen. If something feels wrong, investigate. If you hear something strange, don't ignore it. If you suspect abuse, speak up. That blacksmith saved my life because he heard my screams and chose to act. Not everyone would have. Many people would have walked away, not wanting to get involved, assuming it wasn't their business. But he chose to be my hero. And that choice changed everything. Karma came from my father. He lost his freedom, his respect, everything he valued. He's alone now, rejected by everyone who once respected him, rotting in a prison cell while I'm out here living the life he tried to steal from me. That's real karma. Not immediate, not always obvious, but inevitable. Evil doesn't win. It might win for a while. It might seem unstoppable, but eventually, light finds its way into even the darkest places. Eventually, chains break. Eventually, someone hears your screams. Hold on. Keep fighting. Your freedom is coming. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you want to do something about child abuse and domestic violence, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell because these stories need to be told, need to be heard, need to wake people up to the evil that exists behind closed doors in seemingly normal homes. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you know someone who might be suffering in silence? Have you ever ignored warning signs? Will you commit to paying more attention, to being the person who hears the screams and takes action? Share this video. Share it with everyone you know. Because somewhere out there, there's another Adanna locked in chains, screaming into darkness, praying for someone to hear. Let this story be the reminder that we all have a responsibility to listen, to act, to save those who can't save themselves. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for not looking away from the darkness. Thank you for being willing to bear witness to suffering so that we can all work together to prevent it. I survived. I'm here. I'm free. And I'm using my voice, the voice my father tried to silence for 10 years, to make sure no other child suffers what I suffered. Remember, chains can be broken, locks can be opened, darkness can be pierced by light, and evil, no matter how powerful it seems, will eventually face justice. Stay vigilant. Stay compassionate. And if you hear someone screaming for help, be the blacksmith. Be the hero who doesn't walk away. Be the person who changes everything. Until next time, stay blessed, stay aware, and remember that your voice, your action, your courage might be exactly what someone needs to finally break free.